and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. I welcome Dr. Ambi Parameswaran to this Wise Use Interactive webinar series. And today, the sixth one in our webinar series is on how do we spring back from rejections. The topic the guest is going to speak about today. On behalf of ICFAI Group, I wholeheartedly welcome Dr. Ambi Parameswaran to this webinar series. Thank you very much, sir, for agreeing to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah.
Right, sir. Today, we are going to spend, according to me, one of the most purposeful 60 minutes with the guest. And it is very difficult to get, sir. He is very, very busy with various schedules. But in spite of that busy schedule, he has agreed to join us. Thank you once again, sir. And without much ado, I will go ahead and talk about the program today. The agenda is basically 30 minutes of talk initially by the guest, Dr. Ambi Parameswaran. And then the remaining 30 minutes will be his response to various questions which we have clustered. And the questions will be raised by Professor R. Prasad, who is the Director for Academic Wing. And also I will ask a few questions alongside. So these questions are collected from the audience at the time of registration. And some of the questions will also pop up on the chat box while the discussion is going on. So this is roughly the agenda. And I take pleasure in introducing Dr. Ambi Parameswaran. He doesn't need any introduction, but let me do the honors of putting it together. He is an alumnus of IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta, and not just an alumnus, but he has been awarded the Distinguished Alumnus Award at both the prestigious institutes. And our moderator, Professor R. Prasad, is also from IIM Calcutta. About him, we will talk in a while. Dr. Ambi Parameswaran is currently an independent director, brand coach, startup mentor, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and many more. He, in total, has got about 40 years of experience in brand building. That's a massive, impressive statement for all of us to spend quality time today with Sir on this show. He has authored 9 books on branding, on consumers, on advertising, and on leadership. So with this introduction, I now hand over the proceedings to our guest, Dr. Ambi Parameswaran, to start his talk. Thank you very much, sir. Once again, I welcome you. Please start the talk.
Yeah, thank you. Can I get screen sharing?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Can you see my screen?
Perfect, sir.
Okay. So, Professor Rao, thank you for inviting me here, and look forward to speaking with your students. And I discovered that, just about 6 months ago, I had spoken at another forum hosted by ICFAI, and I hope none of these students were there at the last talk I gave. So otherwise,
no, sir. That is a different audience, and this is a different audience.
Okay, cool. All right. So today, what I'm going to talk about is based on my book, Spring: Bouncing Back from Rejection. A spring, those of you mechanical engineers know that it's a twisted piece of metal that can be pushed, pulled, turned, but it always comes back to its original shape. So Spring is the name of the book. I launched in October last year, and it was not written during pandemic. It was written actually, book started writing about a year and a half ago, but it got published during the pandemic. And I think it's a very relevant topic for all of us to talk about and ruminate over what we are facing today and what each and every one of us is going through. So the question which I want to pose to the group here is, how agile is your internal spring, right? How are you ready to face challenges which are going to come your way? And so the book is a collection of about 60 different stories. About 7 or 8 or 9 are from my own life. The balance are from what I've read, what I've interviewed about 15 different people about how they face challenges, how they face rejection. I must have read close to 10 books and about 25 different articles. And I've arrived at a process on how to process rejection. It is really a simple process. It says first, you have to be positive when you face a rejection. So obviously, whenever you apply for a job, or apply for a promotion, you have to go there fully confident, right, that you're going to get the job or you will get the promotion. But then at the back of your mind, you got to be also ready to accept the rejection. So you got to have a plan B in mind. The second, so that is what I call facing rejection. The second is, when you face rejection, you have to then get under that rejection and find out what happened. So you need to process that rejection. You need to break it up into its compartment parts and find out what happened. It's very easy for us to say, I didn't get that job because the interviewer was very nasty and he gave it to that girl, or you gave it to that guy because he's biased. That's easy to externalize the rejection. But in this step, I'm saying don't take it internal, try and understand what happened in the rejection. The third and the most important part is, how do you process that rejection? How do you figure out and learn from the rejection so that you can do something better? Einstein, I think, said this, that only a fool expects different results if he does the same thing again and again. If you do the same thing again and again, you will get the same result. So you can't keep doing the same thing and expect to get better results. So remember this: face, process, learn. The book is organized in 3 parts: face, process, learn, with several stories under each of these. So in my talk today for the next 20 minutes, I will take you through some of those stories from the book. First is facing rejection. So I'm not an expert on rejection. The book on rejection, book on spring, was something idea which came to me and someone asked me this question at a forum. So, and I started thinking back on how did I face rejection? What happened to me when I got hit by rejection? So I went back to my days at IIT when I was in my final year and I was applying for a final placement. I think it was March 1977. And I applied for Hindustan Lever. I was a chemical engineer, and I got out of the 30 students, about 15 of us had applied, and I think I got knocked out in the first round itself. A very bad performance, but I deserved to be thrown out, because when I went back to my hostel room and pulled out 2 of my chemical engineering books, I discovered the question which had bowled me was actually a very simple question, and I didn't have the answer. So yes, okay, I didn't get into this on lever, but fortunately, I got another job, but I also got into IIM Calcutta. So I went there and I did. And the first year in IIM Calcutta, I did very well. I almost came at the top of my class. So when summer internship interviews came, once again, I decided to apply to Hindustan Lever. And again, cut now to March 1978, and I applied to Hindustan Lever. And this time I was confident I will get it because I had prepared well. I was a very good student. I knew the topic backwards. But after 2 rounds, I got into the final shortlist of 2 people. And I was confident I'll get it. But in the last stage, I was asked a trick question and I gave a very stupid answer, very, very logical answer. And I didn't get the Hindustan Lever job. That's got me thinking, so what should I do? Should I continue to hope for the same thing again and again? I decided to rethink, and I said, I will look at a new direction. And I said, I want to now do a summer assignment in Kolkata. I want to spend time in the city. And I looked for an assignment. I got it with a fairly unknown agency at that time called Rediffusion Advertising. I discovered the world of advertising. And a year later, when it came for final placement, I didn't apply because I got into that agency, Rediffusion. And Hindustan Lever was again coming for final placement, but I didn't apply. And I didn't have to go through that, third round of torture with Hindustan Lever interviewers. But, I will end the talk with another interesting story about me and Hindustan Lever, which should be fun. So if you stay awake, I will tell you the story. Important thing, when you get rejected again and again, think back and look at a new direction. It may be you need to change direction. So that's a first lesson about facing rejection. The other thing is, not all rejections are exactly the same. There are multiple types of rejection. In the book, I've narrated some stories where someone applied, called me repeatedly every month for 6 months before getting a chance to be interviewed. Yeah, that's because he had decided in his mind that he had to get into FC Vulca. And he got in, he did well. Then he went out and got a great career. So you have to decide what is the color of rejection, and then decide whether you want to redirect yourself or continue the same path. Any idea who's this person? Let me see if in the chat box anyone can guess who this is. Any idea who this is? Lucky Ali? No, 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 no. Definitely not Lucky Ali. I don't know whether Lucky Ali will get insulted or this gentleman will get insulted. But this is Sanjay Subramaniam. He's one of the most respected Carnatic music singers, and he was performing in Bombay. And so we had gone to attend the concert, and there was a Hindustani sarod player who came and played. But the strange thing was, hall was virtually empty. And Sanjay Subramanian was supposed to play from I think 6:30 to 8:30, and so we thought people will come at 6:30 for the concert. No one came. So the hall was virtually empty, and I was upset. I met the organizer before the concert started and said, "Look, this is an insult. You cannot have an empty auditorium for someone, a legend like Sanjay Subramaniam." What they told me kind of blew me away, because what they said was, "Look, we explained to Sanjay that there is a problem because of traffic, because we are organizing it in Bandra, which is not a South Indian locality. We're not getting a crowd. We hope it's okay." So the answer he gave was amazing. He said, "Even if there are 5 people in the audience, I will sing for them. You don't worry. I've come from Chennai. I'll sing." It was a fabulous concert. And the next week, the Monday, there was a fantastic review of Sanjay's concert in a Mumbai Mirror, written by Shanta Gokhale, a very leading musicologist. Right. So he didn't get a big auditorium full of people, but he got that one reviewer. So remember, when you're appearing, pitching your idea, when you're appearing for an interview, it's quite possible that the senior people are not in the room. Maybe 2 juniors are interviewing you. But maybe those juniors are critical. That junior may actually be the MD's son. Okay, so remember, this has happened to me multiple times. When I pitch a new business, you find that the MD is not there. Some young chap is there, and you almost get upset, but you realize that that young guy in the room may be a decision maker. So remember what Sanjay said: perform at your best capacity, irrespective of the size of the audience. Okay. Now, right, Sridhar, good point. Okay, Sridhar, now what is common amongst all these 4 books? This is Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, Jeffrey Archer, Harry Potter, Philosopher's Stone, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and Amish Tripathi, book Legends of Meluha. Anyone in the audience can guess what links all these books together?
These are written by different entrepreneurs.
No, they are not written by entrepreneurs. They're all authors. I thought that would have been easy to guess. Authors started at nothing. Yeah, Sumangala has got it right. All these books were rejected by publishers. Jeffrey Archer was rejected 16 times. That book, Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, finally ended up selling a few million copies. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers. Cranfield, which is Chicken Soup for the Soul, was rejected by 144 publishers. And of course, Amish was rejected by so many publishers that he decided to publish the book himself, right? So what are the lesson we learned from there is that authors convinced about what they are writing, and they keep at it, and they have someone behind them supporting them to tell them that this will work. In the case of Amish, it was his agent who said, "Your book is an interesting book. I will publish it." Right? In the case of Stephen King, it was his wife who told him, "This book is a great book. Keep writing it." Right? So they succeeded eventually because they had their inner conviction that what they were doing is something worth publishing. So if you're convinced that your idea is great and your boss rejects the idea, hold on to it. Hold on to it. Maybe pitch it again and the third time, and maybe he'll accept it after 3 rounds. And there are multiple stories in my book about how copywriters tend to save a rejected campaign and then end up selling it to a client later. Now, I'm going to share a short video, which I think some of you may have seen, but this is a wonderful story about a failure and how Dr. Kalam's inner confidence was supported by his wonderful boss, right? With the gesture which he did. So let me play this video.
1979, SLV-3 satellite launch vehicle. I was the project director, mission director. My mission is to put the satellite in the orbit. Thousands of people worked nearly 10 years. I reached the Sriharikkota, and it's in the launch pad. Countdown was going on. T minus 4 minutes, T minus 5 minutes, T minus 1 minute, T minus 40 seconds. Computer put a hold. Don't launch it. Computer says don't launch it. I am the mission director. I have to take a decision. Everything is on. Behind me, there are 6 experts. They saw the computer database coming in and screen, and they see the pictures in the screen. They said there's a problem. The problem is there's a leakage in the system, in the control system. But immediate calculation, no problem. We have got sufficient fuel and oxidation for control. Control system is control the rocket to the required attitude. And we can go ahead. Now, of course, my expert's view, but I took the decision. Problem is mine. Finally, I took a decision. I bypassed the computer. I launched the system. First stage work is a 4-stage rocket, and second stage got mad. It went to the spin. Instead of putting the satellite in the orbit, it put in the Bay of Bengal. 1979, it was a failure. It was a failure. First time I experienced my failure. How do you manage the failure? Success I can manage. So at that time, a great man, a great leader, Professor Satish Dhawan, he comes to me, I'm very tired working nearly for months. It makes me up, come, let us go for a press conference. Press is meeting there, like this, number of people, world press, with photos, this and that, all the gadgets, they are there. I was really frightened. I will be the culprit because I'm the project director, mission director. What Satish Dhawan said, Chairman, Indian Space Research Organization said, dear friends, we have failed today. This is the first time I have to do all the success, all the failure is, I want to support my technologists and scientists and staff so that next year they succeed. So he took the whole blame himself. And then media asked, you put Bay of Bengal so many crores, you are putting like that, a lot of criticism. He received the criticism. He assured them in a year we will succeed with our team. It's a very good team. Next year, here only interesting happened. Next year, July 18th, 1980, when he succeeded, Professor Dhawan said, you go and conduct the press conference. Do you follow what this means? It means when the failure occurred, the leader took it up. When the success came, he used his team. That's the first.
So, see the story here. The failure was taken on by the boss, and the success was passed on to the subordinate. And it's an amazing story. And this probably helped, Dr. Kalam silence his inner critic, get the confidence, and then to make a success out of the launch of the vehicle, which was a success the next year. And that, of course, built his career. He went on to become one of the most respected space scientists in the world, and probably the most loved president the country has ever had.
19th.
So that is the first part, facing rejection. Remember, when you're getting rejected, you're not rejected. Your idea is rejected, your proposal is rejected, and silence your inner critic so that you can get on with your life. The second stage is about processing rejection. What happens when the rejection? So some of you may know, cricket fans know that, Rahul, our beloved cricket player, unfortunately, he was made a buffoon of by a brand called Cred. I will not talk about the ad. Rahul Dravid was rejected from the Indian one-day international team. Anyone knows which year he was rejected? He didn't make it to the Indian one-day international team. He was rejected. This was the year 1998. And so Geet Sethi, world champion snooker player, was in Bangalore practicing for his physicals for his World Cup. And he was in the Krantivira Stadium with a physical trainer early morning. And whom does he see? Literally a few days after the rejection news, it was Rahul Dravid. So he asked Rahul, what are you doing here? Rahul said, no, I need to get my upper body muscles going. So here is a player rejected. And what was he doing? He was not going to Delhi and crying on someone's shoulder, but he was there in the morning in the stadium, getting his physical fitness right. So what happened in the year 1999, World Cup, Rahul Dravid is selected. India didn't do very well in that World Cup, but Rahul Dravid actually was the highest scoring batsman in that World Cup. So what I think the important thing is, you may get dropped from a team, don't curse, process that rejection, just as Rahul Dravid did, go and get your abs, muscles built. So get on to practice more and get your act right. The next story I'm going to tell you is about a startup called Saral Design, which I was involved in, started by two young technopreneurs, Suhani Mohan and Karthik Mehta. They had an idea to make a low-cost machine to make high-quality sanitary napkins. They got some funding from, friends and supporters. They made the prototype, and they started going to VCs. Every week they used to pitch to 2 VCs, and every VC will ask 5 different questions and tell them to come back. 100 presentations later, no money was raised. They were fortunately able to get a sporadic order from Dubai, so they continued to keep the company going. Fortunately, they got invited to participate in a conference in San Francisco, where Suhani made a presentation. And at the end of the presentation, a lady there said, "I want to talk to you." So Suhani went and said, "Yeah, what is it?" So she said, "You're doing it all wrong. You're not an ordinary startup. You're an impact startup." And Suhani had never heard the term impact startup till then. So she explained that, "Look, you're an impact startup. You're not just a money-making startup, but you're going to change society. You're going to impact society. So you need to therefore change your pitch completely." So she helped her rewrite the pitch deck. And mind you, 100 presentations, 0 checks. She rewrote the pitch deck, presented to 10 VC funds, which are focused on impact investing, and she got 4 checks, right? So remember that when find a mentor and use the mentor well, and that's a lesson from there. Next, a story from my own life in advertising, where in 1997, India was opening up, new car companies were coming. In 1997, we were invited by Hyundai to pitch for the car, the car they were going to launch. It was a sedan at that time. We went and made a presentation in Chennai. And when we were flying back, we were saying, "Look, this presentation didn't go well. We are not going to get the account." And we realized that we had not done our homework well enough. As expected, we didn't get the account. But then we said, "Look, this industry is going to open up. More car companies going to come. So let's start doing homework." So we put the team to start studying car buying behavior around the world, car advertising around the world. And we built a dossier. And when Tata Motors unveiled their small car at Auto Show, we met them. We said we invited them to participate in a case study competition, which we were organizing. And they said, "Would you like to pitch for our business?" We said yes. And then 15 agencies pitched for the Tata Motors business, and we won the account. And at that time, our client said that, "Look, we are going to be your number 1 account." I was not sure because we had ITC, we had Amul, we had Wipro, we had Hero. But Tata Motors turned out to be a number 1 account. And let me play an ad, and then I'll tell you a little bit more.
When I saw you standing there, about fell out of my chair. And when you moved your mouth to speak, I felt the blood go to my feet.
Nice car.
Baby, I love you the one me, the way that I want you, the way that it should be. Baby, I love you the one me, the way that I want you, the way that it should be. Baby, you love me the want you, the way that I want you.
Hello, excuse me. Can you give me a lift?
Tata Indica, more dream spoker.
So what happened was we got rejected by Hyundai, but we landed Tata Motors. It turned out to be a very big account for us, and we worked. I personally worked on the Tata Motors business for about 15 years. It continues to be an important account for FCB Ulka. So never worry if you get rejected by something. You may actually end up by getting something better, as long as you put in the effort. Interestingly, the agency which won the Hyundai account lost the account 8 years later because Hyundai brought their own house agency into India. But we continue to handle this account, big account, for many years, right? So we saw facing rejection, we saw processing rejection. Now we come to learning from rejection. And I've got to finish this in 5 minutes. So let me quickly go through. One of the important lessons you learn when you talk to academics is that in academia, being rejected is standard procedure. All PhD scholars who want to publish get rejected. Nobel laureates have had their theses rejected. Nobel laureates have been laughed at, right? So I've captured some of that in my book. But I shared this story with someone who was a computer scientist, and he said he's got about 20 papers published in the last 3 years in multiple conferences. And he said that out of the 20 papers, 13 were accepted the first pass, right? They didn't get, normally in scientific papers, you get rejected and then you get comments and you have to rewrite it and resubmit, and it goes on for 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds. And so he said 13 got accepted first pass. But he said the 6 or 7 which got actually rejected once or twice were the ones which actually ended up winning prizes as the right? So remember, in academia, if you get rejected, read the rejection, read what the reviewers have written, and maybe you can actually make your presentation, your paper, your research even better, right? And use each rejection to become a little better. So the other thing is that, when you're interviewing someone or when you're being interviewed, be ready to talk about your failure. If you're not faced rejection, remember, you've not flown high enough. So facing rejection actually is a seal of approval that you're trying to reach for something which maybe you're not capable of achieving, and therefore you get rejected and you can try again. So let me end my little discourse with a little story about what happened to me when I moved from Chennai to Mumbai to head Ulka, Mumbai. And we had an account called Santur. The agency had got the account in 1989, done some very good work. But when I took over the account in 94, the agency and the client were at loggerheads. The agency was convinced that the insight of younger looking skin and this whole idea of mistaken identity was very strong. It can continue. The client felt that it cannot continue because the brand sales was coming down. So I was caught in the middle. I had to find via media between what had to be done. Finally, we managed to do something nice. And let me play this ad.
खूबसूरत है पहले कभी नहीं देखा इसे एक्सक्यूज मी कौन से कॉलेज में हो कॉलेज और मैं मामी इसकी त्वचा से तो उम्र का पता ही नहीं चलता चंदन और हल्दी के गुण समाये संतूर त्वचा कुछ और निखारे संतूर 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 संतूर.
This ad, which the client was uncomfortable with, turned out to be a very successful ad. And over the next 20 years, I worked on this business. I must have helped create something like 20 different ads, all of them with the same theme, younger looking skin mistaken identity. And the brand went on to become very, very big. In a sense, it funded a lot of Wipro's activities into IT. And in 2018, Santur became the second largest soap brand in the country. So it overtook Hindustan Lever's Lux. Now, when I started working on Santur in 1994, I would have probably not imagined that Santur could one day overthrow Lux. Because Lux at that time was, let's say, 100 and Santur was 10. Right? So this ad changed the fortunes of the brand. We turned it around. We must have done over 20 years I worked on the brand. I must have created 20 different or 30 different ads. Santur went on to become a very big brand, very profitable brand, ended up funding a lot of activities of Wipro to get into more and more businesses. And interestingly, in 2018, Santur overtook Lux to become the second largest soap brand in the country. So in 94, when I started working on Santur, it was not even 1/10 the size of Lux. And consistent advertising, focused advertising, it went on to. So in some sense, Hindustan Lever rejected me twice, and some way it helped me get on to work on a brand like Santur for an Indian company and build a successful brand, and went on probably, hopefully contributing in some way to Wipro's success and to what Mr. Premji has been able to do with his wealth. So I once again thank Hindustan Lever for rejecting me twice, and I played a useful role in the building of the Santur brand. So remember, all of us are going to face rejection. There are phenomenal opportunities. be ready to take risks, see the positive side of things, build your rejection resume and your processing system, and build your inner confidence, inner resilience, and become a super spring. Remember the phase, process, learn way of handling rejection. In the book, there are 60 stories, 100 plus personalities, and hopefully some of you will buy the book and read it, and you'll be able to learn a lot from the book. And those of you who have a Kindle unlimited account, I think you should be able to get it free of cost. Right. So let me just end by a few points. One is Mandela saying that do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again together. And a short commercial break. Spring is available both as a hardcover, as a Kindle, as well as Audible. And of course, my previous book, Nawab News Noodle, was rated as one of the 6 books to read during the lockdown. This is lockdown 1. I suppose the same list will apply to lockdown 2 as well. The list by Harish Bhatt of Tata Sons. And of course, these are my 10 books. So the latest is the 5th edition of Strategic Brand Management. This one, which got launched a couple of months ago. That's a textbook. Right. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on Facebook. So let me stop sharing and then we can get into.
That's fantastic, sir. Thank you very much for this session, which is nothing but
Thank you very much, sir.
Which is nothing but an anatomy of rejection. And you have told us how to actually handle rejections with several examples drawn from your own personal experience, as well as from the experience of others. So with the high of this session, now we will move to the question and answers and the moderation. I'll invite now Professor R. Prasad, who is the director for the academic wing at ICFAI. Professor R. Prasad is also an alumnus of IIM Kolkata, as I mentioned. Before that, he was an alumnus of IIT Mumbai. He has 3 decades of rich experience, both in academics and the corporate world. He is the architect of the online MBA program that is currently running, and he acts as professor and the course mentor for the online MBA program. So I welcome Professor R. Prasad to initiate moderating the session. Thank you very much.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Professor Prasad.
Indeed, this is one of the sessions in our webinar series which has got the largest audience, and very rightly so. The nature of the topic is it comes in every day, every week, every year use. And I think the presentation has reinforced the need to look at rejection in a more organized fashion than what we do right now. Perhaps many times you're not even aware that, about this entire thing.
Thank you, because, my worry is normally people come for the webinar and they leave. So if the people who joined us in the beginning have stayed till the end, that is a remarkable achievement of both ICFAI and to some extent of the speaker. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. There are a large number of questions. So what we have tried to do is we have tried to cluster them, and some of the questions have been answered in the manner in the presentation. So I'll go to the first cluster. We'll interchange the clusters between Mr. Sudhakar and myself so that there is some variation and difference in the way it's done. So I'll take the first cluster, sir. This is basically about understanding and overcoming rejection, more about the methodology, more about the concept. So the first question is, in understanding of rejection, sir, could you enlighten us on the difference between negation, denying the existence or evidence of something, and rejection, refusing to accept, in jobs, profession, business?
Okay, so, there is also the other side of rejection, saying failure. Now, how is failure different from rejection? How is negation different from rejection? So my simple definition of rejection is something which happens to you. So there is someone giving you that decision that you've been rejected, right? Whereas failure could be you could fail to jump, right? You may fall down and get yourself hurt. That's a failure. But the rejection is, you can be rejected in a job, you can be rejected in a proposal. The consumer can reject a product you launch. So that's the rejection. Now, negation, I'm not sure how to interpret negation. Negation is probably a different shade of rejection anyway. right? So because rejection it's across this platform, right? It can be rejection, like I said, it can be rejection by an academic journal. It can be rejection by a publisher. It can be a rejection by an audience. It can be rejection by your own company. It can be rejection by interviewers. So the multiple shades of rejection in itself. So I'm sorry, I'm unable to exactly answer your question on this sort of technical, negation and rejection. I'm not clear.
Fine, sir. The next question is about what is the relation between expectations and rejection, and what causes the feelings of rejection? Why is it so hard?
Well, I think that's a very good question, because a lot of times you are set up. You think you deserve that job, and you don't get it, and you get very upset. Now, I would like to therefore refer to Carol Dweck's concept of mindsets, right? So she talks about. She's a professor at Stanford, I think. So she written this book called Mindset, and in that she says there is what is called a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed mindset is where you think you are very smart and therefore you should get it. Growth mindset says the opposite. Growth mindset says you put in enough efforts, so you will get it. So if you don't get it, it is not you. It is the amount of effort you put in. So a person with a growth mindset will learn from every rejection, whereas a person with a fixed mindset will get demolished at every rejection. So you have to have the expectations, but you have to realize that you don't, no one deserves to give you the order. No one has agreed to give you the order. You have to get it. And if you have a fixed mindset, you will get majorly disappointed. But you have a growth mindset, you'll say, look, I didn't get the order. Maybe I didn't put in enough effort. Maybe I made some mistake. What can I learn? Whom can I talk to? Who can give me advice? How can I become better?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing in the concept of the growth mindset. Also happens to be the area of research for me.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
The third question is on the fear of the unknown, negative bias, fear of rejection, being a big challenge in workplaces of today. How do you overcome this? How do you come out of it positively?
Again, complex question. I think the answer is pretty much in the same meter which I gave for the earlier one, that you have to approach every situation with a lot of positivity. But you have to be ready to say, look, I can get rejected. And if I get rejected, what am I going to do? First thing is to blame yourself, saying, oh God, I'm so terrible, etc., etc. That's wrong. The second is to blame the other guy, saying the boss is a chauvinist, he doesn't understand anything, he's an idiot, he got promoted for the wrong reasons, right? That's again wrong, right? That's not going to help you. What you have to do is to take that rejection, put it somewhere in the middle. And if you can't analyze the rejection, ask someone to analyze it for you. Get a mentor to help you decode that. And then once you decode that rejection, then you say, how am I going to learn from the rejection? How am I going to do something better? So face, process, learn. I think that formula should work irrespective of what is the rejection, right? Obviously, you cannot win everything. You will lose. You will not get the promotion you think you deserve. You will not get the increment which you think you deserve, right? But then how do you process that? How do you learn from that? That's where you come through as a champion. All champions have been rejected. Even a player like Rahul Dravid has been rejected, right? And who are we, right? Anyone can get rejected, right? Even the best of best players, Nobel laureates have been rejected, right? But the ones who succeeded believed in what they were going to do, used a mentor, learned from the rejection, and then went back at it, right? That's what you need to do.
Thank you, sir. The reminder that many great people, those who have achieved significant success in their life, including Nobel Prizes, have been rejected, is a reminder to all of us constantly on this. The next question is about resilience and mindset. What are the tools adults possess that help them to develop these mindsets for resilience, learning, developing confidence, motivation, etc.? And what are the coping mechanisms to emerge from rejection? How to develop a mindset of Elon Musk, in attempting and achieving goals in uncharted territories?
Well, some of these people are rare people, right? I mean, when someone says, oh, Steve Jobs never did any market research, so why should I do market research? My answer is, you're not Steve Jobs. You're a brand manager handling a brand of soap or toothpaste. So don't confuse yourself, right? If you're Steve Jobs, you would have set up a company like Steve Jobs did, right? So we are all lesser mortals. Let's understand that. And what are the questions? Sorry, I got carried away.
There are a number of questions here. Basically, it's about resilience and mindset. And essentially, it's what are the tools that adults possess or will use that helps them to develop these mindsets for resilience, learning, developing confidence, motivation, etc.
Okay, great. So, I'm also a certified coach. So one of the important things which we tell people is to become mindful. So the whole thing is about becoming mindful, and mindfulness also leads to meditation. So can you sit quietly in some place for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour without doing anything? That's what they call mindfulness, and we call it meditation. Both are fine. So meditation helps you becoming more resilient. The other thing is that if you can become conscious of what is happening to you, right? It will help you overcome a lot of these internal problems. So one of the other techniques we tell our coaches is to do journaling. That I'm going through a very depressing time. I'm feeling very bad. No problem. Write it down every day in a journal. Write maybe 1 sentence, maybe 2 sentences about how you felt. And once you start doing it, you'll be able to develop your resilience. Now, resilience is something which every one of us can develop. There is nothing like a resilient quotient, but there is, every one of us can become more resilient if we become conscious that we have to become resilient. See, the first thing is that when you get rejected, when you fail, you either get into 2 modes of action. One is you blame the other side, saying the VC is a SOB, he doesn't understand anything, he's an idiot, blah, blah, blah. The other thing is you blame yourself, saying, oh, I'm useless. I should have, not gone this way. I should have taken up a nice, safe bank job. My mother told me that. My father told me that. Both are wrong. Both are wrong. Both are not ways to become more resilient. More resilient is to be inner confident, develop your inner confidence, listen to your inner voice, right? Learn when to quieten the inner voice. If required, find a mentor, talk to the mentor. And the time to find a mentor is not when you're down. You should have a mentor when you're up. And so when you're down, you can go to that mentor. If you do all this, you'll be able to improve your resilience quotient. I'm not a psychologist. Some of these are very technical questions. I don't have the full answer. I think Mr. Prasad, Professor Prasad, you should be able to answer it yourself better than me, I think.
Well, sir, you have given a lot of practical tools as well, apart from your framework in the book about being mindful, meditation, being conscious, journaling. And I think these are all very practical tools which everyone in the audience can use, others can also use. Here's the next question, sir. This is in a particular context. How does one build self-esteem after he or she has been rejected by a partner or a close family or friends?
Well, I think I've consciously stayed away from personal relationships in my book. That's a minefield. That's an area where I don't have any competence, because that's an area where psychologists and psychiatrists should opine over. So I'm not an expert on telling you how to get back your girlfriend or boyfriend, or how to patch your marriage up. My apologies, sir. I am completely unable to answer that.
Thank you, sir, for being frank. There have been a wide variety of questions, and I'm sure we'll all benefit at the end of it. There's so many suggestions also which are coming up. The next section is something that I'd like to hand over to Mr. Sudhakar Rao, who will take it on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Prasad. Sir, from mindset or resilient mindset and talking about the largeness of the space in which we can actually look at problems and seek answers, we would like to move towards marketing resilience, which is something which we can't get away from, and you are part of that domain. So what makes a consumer come back to the rejected product? Is it due to the repositioning of the brand or due to the emerging needs of the buyer?
Well, you know, every brand can go through its share of rejection. I think the important thing is that marketers don't recognize it early enough. And so they keep fooling themselves saying, look, let us run one more campaign. Let us do something else. Let us reduce the price. Let us, do a promotion and we'll turn around. No, I think the first thing when you face rejection in marketing is to go back to consumers and find out why you got rejected. It could be something to do with the product was too early for its time, right? And therefore, there was no market in that gap. You thought there was a gap in the market, but there was no market in that gap. So which means it's better to withdraw and retreat and try again later. However, if you find that the product has appeal, but you were not able to kind of unlock a consumer insight, then you need to work hard to find out what is the consumer insight which will work for your brand. Now, the consumer insight could be, for example, how do you increase consumption of eggs in this country? So the agency which worked on it, a friend of mine, there was no more, called Anand Halve, he said we should make egg eating a daily habit. We know currently most families eat egg only once or twice a week. So they came out with a campaign, Sunday ho ya Monday, Rose Khao Ande. Now that campaign ran for only a few years, but it's still being remembered, right? Because it's such a powerful idea. Right? Or when we were working on the NDDB milk campaign, and milk was losing its fun quotient. Milk was seen as a very boring drink compared to Coke and compared to Pepsi. As a result, Dr. Kurian told us to do a campaign which made milk fun. So we did that, doodh, 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 wonderful doodh campaign, right? And children were singing that song. Children were singing that song and running on the road, saying doodh, doodh, doodh. And suddenly it made doodh a fun, happy thing to drink. Well, did we stop Coke or Pepsi? No, we did not. But we saved milk. By doing that, we saved milk. So I'm sure in many homes, some of the participants here were singing doodh, doodh, doodh when their mom was giving them a glass of milk to drink, right? So in marketing, if you have to go back to the consumer and find out why you're being rejected, and if you can unearth an insight, that insight will help you to reposition the brand, relaunch the brand, repurpose the brand, and get back onto a growth track. But if you find that no, the brand is wrong, doesn't appeal to anyone. I mean, because of big brands have failed, right? Segway, which is supposed to be $1 billion startup, failed because it didn't serve a purpose. Neither was it a scooter, nor was it a two-wheeler, nor was it a cycle, nor was it a car. Right? At one time, it was supposed to be a $1 billion company. Its sale never crossed, I think, $20 million. Now it is used as a fun thing used by tourists. It was supposed to one day change urban transportation. It didn't, right? So even the biggest of big people have failed.
Great, sir. Great examples, actually. When something goes wrong, go back to the customer and talk to them and understand what is the problem. So you get the consumer insight, and then you know what to do after that. So from here, the next question emerges, sir. Is it the people who build the brand, or is the brand which builds people?
But that's a philosophical question. You can even say, are people building brands or brand building people, or consumers building brands? Right? There's a consumer factor here. So finally, I would say all of us don't build brands. It's really the consumer who decides whether your brand is successful or not. So neither you, me can build a brand. It's a consumer who's going to build your brand for you. So you got to be humble enough, because as Peter Drucker said, the only purpose of an organization is to create and retain a customer. So as long as you're customer focused, your brand will succeed. The moment you lose that focus, your brand is going to fail.
Great, sir. So customer focus and the customer builds the brand. So in what we have noticed in the recent past is despite reduction in print media circulation, what are the challenges faced by various brands to sustain their brand image? Can you help us decipher this?
Well, when I started my career in advertising, it was largely print and a little bit of cinema and a very little bit of radio and even a smaller bit of TV. That has dramatically changed. I was reading a book today. I was told that in 1938, in America, radio became a bigger advertising medium than print. 1938. Radio was bigger than print in America. But then radio fell down, print fell down, and TV became supremely confident. And we are seeing the same thing happen in India. Digital has become very, very big. Television is continuing. Print, they said, will die. Print has not died. In fact, Indian language print is continuing to grow. And actually, when the pandemic was kind of retreating in October, November, December, Jan, Feb, March, print medium had come back pretty relatively strongly. A lot of even FMCG companies are advertising in print. But now again, with the lockdown, they've all gone. I think they'll come back. Print will, there is a problem in this excessive marketing focus on digital. I was talking to a set of international brand consultants who were saying that, look, tell me of a brand which has been built purely on digital, which is of the same scale as, let's say, an Apple or a Nike today. No. The point is, once you can build a brand up to a particular size through digital, after that you have to go to TV and print. So TV and print gives you credibility. Digital, unfortunately, gives you no credibility. And it may change. It may change in the next 5 years. But right now, even a pure digital brand, like say all your games, right? All your online games are all on TV, right? Baiju is heavily on television, right? So I think somewhere we believe that print and TV are more credible compared to digital. It may change, but you will have to wait and watch.
Great, sir. Thank you. Sir, in this pandemic, are there any tips? How do we maintain customers and brand value?
I think in the pandemic, one has to understand, I think if you're in a B2B business, you have to maintain contact with your customers. And I'm seeing that a lot of B2B companies are actually benefiting from this pandemic because they can do multiple customer calls. And customers are able to meet them online. Customers are able to order things online, right? I know of someone who sells huge equipment worth hundreds of crores, where earlier he was saying that for an order of 100 crores, they would have had to make 20 trips to the client. Let's say a client is in Kolkata, so your office is in Bombay. You have to make 20 trips to Kolkata to meet the client's technical team, client's finance team, client CEO. But he said we made no trips. We made no trips. We had 20, Zoom meetings, and we got the order, right? So what has happened is the digitization of business actually helped the bigger brands. The bigger brands, in fact, it's been a death knell for the smaller brands. The smaller brands are getting squeezed out everywhere. I think that's why the Indian stock market has gone crazy, because the bigger brands are in the stock market, the smaller brands are outside. So the bigger brands are benefiting with this pandemic, because when in doubt, whom do you buy? You buy the brand which is top of mind, right? When you're scared, what do you go for? You go for the safest option. So that's what is happening. If you're working in a big company, working on a big brand, luck is favoring you. If you're in a small brand, you have to realize that you got a bigger mountain to climb. So you got to work that much harder, right? Thank you.
Great, sir. I think we should stay in touch with the customer all the while, wherever we are. Sir, the next thing is what we all of us are talking about, the post-crisis. Soon after this major crisis that we are going through, whenever it is, I think the fear of missing out is going to hit us in terms of, say, creative bankruptcy or the fatigue associated with this. How does one deal with these things? Because everything is uncertain. And when we look inside into the marketing teams, how do we cope up with this kind of creative bankruptcy fatigue?
I think marketing, unfortunately, during the pandemic, marketing has been completely pulverized. Companies have focused on supply chain because you got to make sure that the product is made and supplied. Companies are focused on, of course, IT because you got to give computers, make sure everyone works from home. Companies are focused on HR because you want to make sure people are safe, right? And of course, finance is always very important. And marketing, the big role marketing had in companies is that they were the eyes and ears of the customers, right? That they've lost that. So if I were in marketing, I would say once this pandemic is behind us, I will seriously increase my exposure to customers. I will invest more in market research. I will do more market visits. I will do more customer visits. I will learn more and more about how the customer is changing. If you don't do that, I would say marketing is history. It will be supply chain.
Great, sir. So one more view I would like to seek from you. In this data-driven world, marketing is completely data-driven. Do you think still the creative works have a place?
Absolutely. I mean, stories are always going to be powerful. Stories are always going to be important. I think Aswat Damodaran, who's a #1 valuation professor at NYU, written a fabulous book called Numbers and Narratives, where he says even hard-nosed financial analysts get carried away by the story because stories are so much more powerful than numbers. So if stories are more powerful, stories come from creativity, stories come from the right brain, right? And they are not going to go away, right? So they continue to be important.
I have one last question in this cluster, sir. That is, does healthcare require advertising?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Healthcare needs advertising. Our polio vaccine campaign done by the government of India was such a success, right? So we need healthcare advertising. I'm saying one is polio vaccine. Then if you come into other types of vaccines have been advertised. Of course, all of us know OTC products have been advertised. I've spent 6 years of my life working on brands like Colder Strepsils and Bernol. We need more of OTC advertising in this country because as a country, we go too many times to doctors for two stupid reasons, right? We should be more self-medicating more for trivial problems, and that needs for a lot of advertising. And I see healthcare advertising becoming much and bigger. I think health insurance advertising is going to become very big. I'm sure e-medicine is going to be a big advertiser. I advise a company called MediBuddy based in Bangalore, which is into e-medicine. It's going to become very big. All these sectors are going to see a fairly big boom because I think health consciousness may continue for some more time.
Awesome, sir. Awesome responses. Thank you very much. I now hand over to Professor Prasad for the next cluster of questions. But before that, one request to you, sir. The time that I have sought from you, that 60 minutes is over, but we have lots of questions. May I request you to take a few more questions?
Yeah, but let's try and I know people are also leaving. I think they've got at one time we had 120 people. Now we are down to 100, and it should not be that only you, me, and Professor Prasad are talking to each other. So we should wind up in the next 5 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll take the most important clusters. There are another 2 clusters apart from that. So I'll take the most important clusters. And this is about career resilience. One question is about mid-career, failure, disappointment, rejection. And how do you handle this? And if this happens multiple times, what do we do? Suppose it happens 10 times, 20 times. So what do we do about this?
One, if career rejection can happen. All of us have gone through careers where you think you deserve a promotion, you didn't get it, or someone got hired above you, well as you thought you deserved it. So my simple advice is to find out why. Go behind it. Same thing. Face, process, and learn. Find out what happened. And if you think this is going to happen again and again, then you need to get out, which means you need to find a mentor who can advise you on what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. So let me narrate this little story. I was approached by someone whose nephew was going through a crisis like this. This was last year, around August. This person was working in a very large media agency, and in January last year, January 2020, he had decided to leave that agency and he got a very good job at another agency. But this agency where he was working told him that we will match the offer, etc., etc. So, come March, he decided to stay back in his agency and did not join the other company. So the other company said, sorry. So he decided not to join the other company. And the other company said, look, we are anyway not hiring. So when we start hiring, do you want us to consider you? So he said, no, I've stayed back. So the other company in July took a lot of people whom they had told wait. Right? And this guy had said, no, I'm not interested. So he stayed on with his old company. And come September, this company said, we are laying off people. And since you had resigned in January, we are laying you off. Now, this guy had a family, had 2 kids. He was going through a huge crisis. So someone knew I was an ex-advertising guy. So he put me on to, I said, what option do you have? I said, look, he said, I'm doing freelance, but I've got this offer from this television channel to join them. And my family, my wife, mother are saying, join, don't sit at home. I said, listen, you worked for 12 years in some very good companies. Right? Now you end up joining this unknown little agency, the unknown little TV company that's going to go into your CV. That's not going to look good. So can you continue to do freelance for another 3 months till, and things can open up? After 3 months, if things don't open up, take whatever option you get. So he said, okay, sir, that's, useful advice. And, now I'm having the confidence. So he continued to freelance for another 3 months. And then in January, he got hired back. He got hired back by his old company at a higher package. Because I said, look, if you have the skill set, which is in demand, people will call you back. Right? So learn to face, process, and learn from the rejection. Have a mentor if required to advise you. And if you get rejected 10 times, 20 times, there's something fundamentally wrong. You're the wrong guy in the wrong job. We need to do some serious correction.
Thank you, sir. I think the framework that you presented does answer a number of questions which have come up. There is a the last question that I'd like to ask is related to education. Now, if we need to imbibe this in students, how do colleges and universities imbibe this trait of resilience in students?
I think we need to prepare students for rejection. I mean, you don't do that. In my book, I've written some of the business schools even propagate this idea of a dream company. And I wrote in this portal called Citizen Matters that it's a crime to talk about dream company because you're setting them up for failure, right? You can talk about dream sector. You can talk about dream sector saying, look, I want to work in consulting, or I want to work in FMCG, I want to work in manufacturing. But say that, no, I want to get a job in Hindustan Lever. Out of 200 students, only two guys are going to get in, 2 girls are going to get in. And you've got to set yourself up. So I think we need to prepare our students to be a lot more realistic, to be ready for facing rejection. Because if we don't do that, when they get hit by a rejection, they're going to feel very, very bad, right? And unfortunately, whatever we professor types tell, there is a crazy student world out there. There is this completely absurd system of day 0, day 1 placement, which is all totally moronic, right? I mean, I was a top ranker, one of the top 5 students at IIM Calcutta. I could have applied to Citibank or TAS or whatever. I didn't even go through placement. I took up a job in an unknown advertising agency, right? So why did I do that? And I think I've done okay. Someone may say you would have done better than this if you had joined Citibank. Maybe I would have, but I'm okay with where I am. So I'm saying we have to prepare the students that don't get obsessed with placement, don't get obsessed because, anyway, all these guys fight so much for the day 1 job, and then 1 year later they've quit that job. So what's the purpose of the day 1 madness? Right? Makes no sense.
Thank you, sir. I think that's a wonderful suggestion and can be practically tried out also at educational institutions. I guess the professors as well as the placement teams will have to keep this in mind. I would limit myself to this, sir. I think we have taken more than the share of time that you have assured us. It has been extremely valuable. I'd hand it back to Mr. Sudhakar. Thanks a ton, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We didn't realize how this 60 minutes flew off. And frankly speaking, my mother, who was sitting in the next room, she came around to see why Santur advertisement is coming on this laptop. She uses Santur, by the way, but it's so interesting for her that she came around and she was sitting and listening to all these things. She doesn't understand anything about what's going on here, one in terms of the language and one in terms of what we are conducting. But then it was so entertaining. That is the hallmark of Dr. Ambi Parameswaran, teaching, entertaining, and sharing views and methods and suggestions for us to deal with all kinds of problems. Sir, we have learned a lot and understood the framework of face, process, and handle rejections in various contexts of our life, both work as well as at home. I think thank you very much, sir. On behalf of ICFAI Group, I once again thank you immensely for sparing this time with us. And I would love to come back to you and request you for another session whenever it is convenient to you as per your schedule. But for now, from all of us here, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your patient listening, and glad that everyone, I've been reading the comments, and I think
there are many questions still pending. We'll write to you, sir, by email. I'll send it across if it is possible. But then there's no end to this. We'll have to only request you to come back for another session. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you and good night.
Good night, sir. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. And it was a very engrossing and entertaining and valuable session from Dr. Ambi Parameswaran. I thank all of you for patiently listening to and joining us and raising questions, not only at the time of registration, but also while the session is on. These questions are very interesting, and we'll track each of these questions and try and make sense of it, even for our own internal learning, as well as for sharing with all of you at an opportune time. Take care and stay safe. Thank you all once again.